Today on Voice of the Valleys, the lying mainstream media, as per usual, BBC platforming an outright illegal alien with a pre-written script being fed through an earpiece about the joys of the ECHR, Zach Polanski outright saying that we need to import third world hoards in order to wipe people's bums because he doesn't want to, and a black man has been acquitted on a jury in Portland because he claimed that the person he stabbed called him the N-word. All that and more today on Voice of the Valleys. Why, hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Voice of the Valleys yet again with your host, friendly neighbourhood, far-right, thug or hysterical, unless he's not Mr. George Cresswell. Getting straight into it today. So, hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Thank you to everybody who tuned in for the stream. On the weekend, we went over Laura Towler versus Rikki Doolan. You'll find that down below. Yes, it's an old stream. Yes, I've seen that's been one of the prominent lines of actual criticism in some of the comments that I have seen. The lessons are timeless, however, that's why I thought it was good to revisit. It's always good to go back and revisit it as well for how well things have aged, right? The reason why people go back and watch Enoch Powell speeches and all manner of nationalist figure in the UK, they go back and rewatch those speeches because of how well those things have aged. Saying that, you know, this thing happened years ago, so why are you going back and revisiting it? Well, why are we saying that Enoch Powell was right all the time? All right, that for those of you who are saying that this channel provides no content, I have to rebuke that. Because it was actually one of the things that we talked about on this channel, namely when we talked about, or podcast rather, when we talked about the incident which happened in a KFC in France recently, and I tied that back to what could have happened at a KFC in Bridgend. That was actually the first time somebody had heard about it whose daughter worked in a KFC in Bridgend. So for the person who said that this channel provides no content, or there's no content from this guy, outright untrue. Criticize me for going back over a good stream all you want, but that point which you said, that comment which was made, but there's zero content from this guy, I'm sorry, I don't feel that's true. And I think many of you do agree with that as well. Thank you to everybody who obviously reaches out in any way with, things on the email or through social media or whatever. Please, please continue to like, share, subscribe, all of that stuff. Follow me on Rumble, all of that good stuff. And if you get something out of this, then please make sure to share it as well. Get straight into today. So, big mask off moment. I covered this with a short on YouTube as well, but this big mask off moment recently with regards to BBC Question Time. The ever so compassionate "we need migrants" dying on his sword for the third world hordes, leader of the Greens, Zach Polanski, said that we need migration because I don't want to wipe people's bums. Outright admitting it's nothing to do with compassion, nothing to do with any kind of empathy or anything like that. It has been, and it is and always has been, about importing a third world slave class, which is not only just very disingenuous and very damaging to the British people, because frankly, a lot of people would be in jobs in care where these things would be applicable and stuff like that if they were paid enough, right? The whole thing is to drive them down, to make it harder for them to own homes, to have families, depopulation, all of that very, very sinister agenda, how it all plays in. But even you can see in the BBC audience, their heads are in their hands. They cannot believe that he has said this. And I said in the short, it's either he said something he wasn't supposed to say, in which he's shown he doesn't have the political know-how to not say things that he's supposed to say when it's in a high-pressure situation. That's not what we need from somebody like a prime ministerial figure, right? And those who are then actually honest, right, who actually state their position despite all the shit that they get, like Rupert Lowe, they don't have any of that trouble, right? There's actually authenticity there, or at least it seems anyway. Certainly out of the people we have in Parliament, it seems that Rupert Lowe has by far the most authenticity, right? Or he said it, and this is how he actually thinks, and he actually thought that people thought that this was a good thing to hear, in which case, obviously, his barometer is way off. It's completely ill-calibrated. Another point that completely disqualifies him from being put in any position of political power. Again, explains then why all of these far-left radicals that are intent on destroying our country and destroying our people rally to people like Zach Polanski. Here's that clip if you haven't seen it, ladies and gentlemen. All that you need to know. So again, outright admitting that the whole point we need them. Bear in mind, completely ignoring the fact that if 1 in 5 are migrant origin, 4 in 5 are not. Where's the credit? Where's the credit for the native British worker, which I saw somebody pointed out? So if 1 in 5 are of migrant origin, that means 4 in 5 aren't, right? The argument may be that then the 4 in 5 are a lot more important, maybe. And that as we've seen, more and more people have come in from outside, right? Things don't tend to get better. They tend to get a hell of a lot worse. It's just the reality. It's almost like being within someone's, in-group, having that in-group and having that tribe, so to speak, is just the natural way humans work, and here into human nature tends to make things work better. So again, it was relieving, however, to see this absolute mask-off moment, because I saw a lot of people, it's absolutely astroturfed, obviously, but he was being pushed to the frigging moon, and it's just refreshing to see, relieving to see, rather, that they've had this beautiful, beautiful mask-off moment, and then everybody can see how this all ties together. Oh, you're importing third worlders because that's what you see them as. They're only fit to white people's bums and all stuff like that. That's all you see them as, right? It's the same mentality as any slave-driven mentality, slave-driving economy mentality was. Who's going to pick our crops? Who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? Who's going to do all the things that we see are beneath us, right? For pitiful, a lot less wages than you would have to pay the native British worker. And that's exactly why. And that's how it ties in with all other things then, because again, they can't have families, they can't get financial security, they can't get a house, all of these things, right? So it all plays in to that wider depopulation, very sinister agenda. And the BBC, again, coming from the same question time, I believe it was, absolutely worse than Pravda. Not only did they put on 4 pro-immigration voices on this one panel, right? And the only quasi-anti-immigrant voice was somebody from an immigrant background himself, right, from an ethnic minority, Zaya Yusuf. They actually put an illegal alien in the audience, feeding him information through a headset to give this pre-written script about the ECHR to try and, either generate sympathy or whatever. It went down like a lead balloon. From what I've seen, it went down like an absolute lead balloon. But this is where we are now. Our BBC, the quote-unquote British Broadcasting Company, will put an illegal alien that they literally say, you came over on a boat. That's what they literally say. They say, you came over on a boat. And he's like, yeah. And then has this script that he's not even being fed, not just being fed through the headphone, which you can see, or through one of those, I think they're called bone conduction headsets, right? It's being fed the information seemingly through one of them. But not only that, he's then reading it off his phone and still can't read it properly. And again, I get it. He's literally just come from a foreign country 2 minutes ago. Why is he on national TV where the BBC put him in a position where we're supposed to listen to him on dictating British foreign policy is technically foreign policy, but immigration policy? Why the hell are we doing this? This is how you see how bad the BBC really are. This is how bad they really are. Seems that the whole point is that they are very intent on giving us a very, very raw deal. A very, very raw deal, because they obviously, all of these NGOs, we'll get onto in a moment, got some very interesting clips to go over. They're hell-bent on bringing these people here. They are the gangsters, which we've been told that when Labour says smashing the gangs, not only is it a myth, because it seems that there's actually not really that much in terms of people smuggling gangs. It's all of these NGOs that are ferrying people over from Calais and all these things, right? As we'll get onto in a moment. They are the real gangsters. We were perfectly fine. And we have our own human rights legislation, which has already been, politicized and used against us anyway, right? But when we're not even able to deport, let alone do anything else with, right? We're not even able to deport foreign rapists and pedophiles and all of that, right? Because of a persecution they might get back home or because of what other amenities, right? It's not any good for us. Don't try and make the case that it's good for us. We have our eyes. We have our eyes. And that, in fact, is what led us to being, a lot of us feeling, as being dictated to by foreigners, is actually getting a little bit tiresome. But here's a better image that you can see now, ladies and gentlemen, which I'll bring up on screen for you. And you can see what I mean. That this here is quite clearly, so you can see it clear as day. I'll just zoom in just a little bit more and try and bring it down just a little bit. Bear with. There we are. Move it over this way a little bit. Okay, actually that's a bit too close. That's a bit too far away. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just trying to get it cropped so it comes up on screen. Okay, so here now, if I just move this over this way slightly and then crop it this way. Actually, no, it's because the image is a bit of a weird size. So here we go. This is where you'll see it now. Clear as day. Clear as day, right? Bring it up on screen. You can clearly see, sorry about that, it took me a little bit longer than I would have wanted to, the bone conduction headset wrapping all the way around the back of his head. And when you zoom the image out a little bit, you can find it in the comments of the clip that'll be linked down below. You can actually see the headset wrap all the way around it. You can see that the headset is clearly there. It's not your eyes deceiving you or anything like that, because it actually pushes the back part of his hair in, and you can see it pushes the back part of his hair in as well. Absolute gutter trash. And this is what, remember when people were defending the BBC as the best in journalism and the most trusted source in media and stuff like that, the way they talk about all other left-wing media outlets, because the left is the one that dominate all of these outlets and stuff like that in the modern day. Absolute lies. Absolute lies. And you see absolute lies in all of these left-wing coded medias all across the world, mind you. CNN in America is no different, when they're caught lying on air about a white man committing a crime, supposedly a very heinous crime, right? I'll give you the rundown now. Turns out it actually wasn't a white man. It was in fact the very opposite, but that didn't stop Jake Tapper on CNN from claiming that it was a white man that done this heinous crime, as Gerald on Louder with Crowder will give you the breakdown now.
Jake Tapper, my good friend Jake, never wants to be wrong. He always wants to make sure that he gives you the straight news. And he does, listen, not everybody does this, but he does his research, and he broke it down on CNN last night.
The FBI finally announced that they had arrested a suspect accused of planting pipe bombs near the Republican and Democratic National Committee headquarters the night before the January 6, 2021 Capitol attack. Brian Cole Jr., a 30-year-old white man from the D.C. suburbs, is charged with transporting an explosive device in interstate commerce and with malicious destruction by means of explosion.
I just pause it there a moment. So let's make that again. 30-year-old white man is what Jake Tapper said. And this is in reference to an attack that was going to happen outside of both Democratic and Republican institutions, back in 2021. And this was broadcast on CNN, as you saw on the date at the top left of the screen, December 4th of this year, right? So this is 4 years on. Well, 22, 23, 24. Yeah, 4 years on. Let's just make that right. Here's the white man in question.
Wow. Jake Tapper thinks if you have a big house, you can't be anything but white.
Andy lived in a nice neighborhood that was quiet with no crime.
Whoa.
So
Jake Tapper said no blacks in the suburbs.
Here's the white guy in question. No! What? Come on.
As you can tell, ladies and gentlemen, a pause on screen. It is not a white guy. Mr. Brian J. Cole Jr., who lives in a single-family house in Woodbridge, Virginia, Washington, D.C., suburb about 25 miles southwest of the Capitol Hill, with his mother and other family members. He was arrested and charged in connection with the explosives, which luckily did not detonate. He is a black guy. CNN, these left-wing media just think that that's how comfortable they've gotten with lying. That's how comfortable they've gotten with their agenda. The BBC has gotten so comfortable that nothing is going to come from this, right? They've gotten so comfortable thinking that they're not going to have any repercussion, that the public are not going to hold them to account or anything like that. They're not going to cancel license fees, which luckily at the moment, we are seeing seeming record levels of cancelling license fees, which is a good thing, in my opinion. Tell me anywhere where you have to be paid to be you have to be forcibly paid to be propagandized. That's where we are in the UK. We're supposedly a free country. But you have here, they become so comfortable with lying because they think that people just aren't going to check. And that's why they want to shut down all these independent medias and stuff like that, shut down podcasts, shut down shows like Steven Crowder, for example, in America, demonetized, deplatformed, all of this stuff, right? They call you Nazi, they call you all these different things in order to then kill you if it comes to that, right? That's why, again, we saw the ex-Antifa member. They don't call you a Nazi because you are a Nazi, and that's accurate, right? They call you a Nazi to justify killing you. And obviously the mainstream media does that all the time as well. But this is how comfortable they've gotten. That's why, again, if you're paying the license fee, please stop. If you're paying the license fee, please stop. If you're doing anything to contribute to any of this stuff, it needs to stop. You have to vote. We have to really start voting, right, with our wallets. And that, again, potentially even come down to things like council tax and stuff like that, where, again, there's a lot of potential consequence comes down with that. But, again, ultimately, the government is only going to care. They're like an organised crime family. They only care when it hits them in their wallets. That's the only time that they care, right? And think about it, because they're being backed by such organisations so high up and stuff like that, you've got to think there's going to be no other reason why they're going to care. People get mad. Oh, who cares? People have been mad for nearly 100 years. They've never, ever cared, right? So you're going to have to be something different. Now, this is what you're seeing now. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, I just had to close the door. again, you're seeing here now, we're not just dealing with any kind of, one gang, whatever, that's just a little people smuggling operation. No, we're dealing with the commission, right? You'll get that reference. If you know anything about the New York organized crime families and stuff like that, you'll get that reference. We're dealing with the commission, right? And that's why they're so powerful. The gangsters that we need to worry about are the NGOs, right? The gangsters we need to worry about are the NGOs. And there's been some good guys, seemingly, over in Calais at the moment doing a lot of good work exposing, the reality of people who are coming over, right? A lot of people have been going over there documenting what's going on. They've been threatened. A guy got recently tried to stab one of our guys, an Englishman that was over there in the back of a car, right? We got that video. We'll go over that in a moment. But it's clear that it's not people smuggling gangs like, foreigners with AK-47s and stuff like that. No gangs. It's all NGOs. And the video proof of that now is coming out because of the good work that people are doing exposing this. And they're so confident people are again. Or again, maybe they have been given the script in this instance not to say this kind of stuff, right? Even though we found the documentation, we have all of it now, right? Well, we don't have all of it, but we're getting little bits of it coming through. The migrants themselves, doctors, engineers, all of that stuff, outright say who's responsible.
I like this one. Hello, mate. Are you the NGO? Where are you from? You NGO, yeah? No, respect. Just go to chill out. You buy from Holland, buy from Germany. Holland, Germany, yeah. We've heard that. We've heard a lot about that. Denmark? Yeah. Okay. So you guys are Kurdish Iraqis. So let's tell me about these gangs of people. There's no gangs. No gangs. Really? This is good for you to tell me this. So, because we have told in England that you guys are brought over by gangs. It's not true.
No gangs. No gangs. It's all NGOs, and they openly say as much.
You have your own stuff, you get...
Obviously, I would imagine it's because they don't even know not to say this kind of stuff, maybe, right? Or maybe the NGOs themselves, they don't actually care. They openly flaunt how much they're doing for these people, right? But Danny Tomo, the guy that's been over there, right, allegedly found instructions as well, written down for these people, what to do, how they can use this stuff, all the cards that they've been given, like the pre-loaded bank cards and stuff like that, right? The preloaded Visa cards and all of that stuff, being found written instructions, right? Is showing that the UK, the EU, and all of these, again, globalist NGOs especially, that they are working through, right? You know that Senedd waste analogy where the government is at the centre, like, of this octopus, right? And you have all these different arms coming off to go to these different charities, whether it's Sustrans, whether it's the Welsh Race Council, whether it's all of these different things, right? That they siphon money into, and it's this big, basically, money laundering operation. And it's racketeering is what it is. I'm trying to think that I wish we had RICO legislation in here, right? Because it's increasingly being shown. And Michael Franzese wrote a book about this, which I haven't had the chance to read yet. I really want to. Mafia Democracy, who's saying that the biggest organized crime family in America at the moment is the American government. We are seeing that increasingly with this facilitated migrant invasion, right? And it's being funded by these NGOs. Check out this clip. It's a long clip, so I won't be putting the whole clip on here now, but make sure you go check out the links down below. It's all of these sources from X and whatever else will be linked down below for you to go and check out.
Another thing here we're finding IDs all over the place. We'll document that. But this here has been written by the NGOs. We talked about the fact that there's no gangs. It says ADA is paid at the beginning of the month, your personal payment card. The card will be used at any shop equipped with electronical terminal. You will receive an SMS on your phone informing you that ADA has been credited to your card. You should only use the card at the shop as credit to avoid any blocking of the card. During providing it, for any questions, I want to ring that fucking number. What was that?
As far as I'm aware, he goes on to actually ring the number. I'm not sure if it actually goes through it or anything like that, but go and check out the full clip. You can see here, they're literally, in fact, you can see part of it there. I don't actually know what ADA stands for. It says, how will you receive the ADA? In fact, I'll bring this still back up on screen for you, and I'll just read over the top. Again, you can see it there. ADA is paid at the beginning of the month on a personal payment. Again, the paper's a bit bent, so it's hard to see. Any shop equipped with an electronic payment terminal, you receive an SMS on your mobile phone. Very well orchestrated. very well orchestrated, nothing organic about it. And as we've seen, nothing empathetic about it, nothing compassionate about it. This is a facilitated invasion. This is a facilitated invasion. Here's more how you know who's at fault, who is ultimately responsible, right? It's people and organizations like this. Now, I just realized my headset has done that stupid glitch again, so bear with, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, and I'm back. Apologies about that. I won't play it over the top. I won't play this with any music because this is just a video with music over the top. But here we go. You can see this is a video of these charities or these NGOs, whatever they're called, setting up these hot shower services and stuff like that. So the gangsters, they're not wearing, Teflon suits. They're not Teflon Don, John Gotti or anything like that, right? They're setting up gazebos and stuff like that. They're in the amnesty vests. They're in these whatever the hell NGO this is for, these greens and stuff like that, right? So I have no idea what the hell is actually, these guys are in terms of who they are at this present moment in time, right? In terms of who this exact NGO is. But fair to say, it's traitorous. It's absolutely traitorous. These are the ones that are facilitating the invasion. These are the ones that are facilitating the invasion. Now, I got to just answer a message a bit quick, folks. Give me 2 seconds. Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. I know you would have seen just a slight cut there, but here's another one again. Here's another one, and you can see exactly who this is being headed up by. It's your usual suspects, ladies and gentlemen. The hyper woke liberal females that are absolutely really spearheading these initiatives, right? Openly touting about how empathetic or how loving all these things that they are when they're facilitating the invasion and downfall of our countries. One small part of it, mind you, the biggest part of it is the legal invasion, and which has been the biggest usurper, right? Because the vast majority of people that have usurped British culture and ethnically cleansed many areas of Britain have come through legal means. In fact, hang on, there we go. Let's see if I can pause it a bit quick, just before we skip to the end. Let me see if I can pause it a bit quick. Here we go, Roots, there we go. And the classic recycling symbol. And think about it, there's no bigger con at the moment, in my opinion, than this whole recycling thing, because A, it goes to the biggest point of it anyway. But if the government, like China, wanted to know anything about you, right, what foods you buy, how much of foods you buy, whether you have certain problems like drink and stuff like that, right, it hit me when I forgot to put the glass out for a couple of weeks running, and there was a bunch of bottles. There was a bunch of alcohol bottles and stuff like that, because I like my whiskey every now and again, right? You see the little love heart thing there, right? It's absolutely disgusting. But think about it. Why do we have to go through this whole systematized recycling system, splitting everything up into different things, right? Which obviously then the government knows exactly where it comes from. The government knows exactly what's coming from what house. And they can actually get a lot of information about who you are, or about who the people live there by having that systematized, framework in place, right? You see somebody come in, the glass is consistently filled with bottles and stuff like that from this certain house. The government can say that, that guy has a recycling problem. When the social credit system comes into effect, we can just knock his social credit system down. We can knock his social credit score down if it's deemed, not to be a good citizen, right? Think about internet traffic and stuff like that. The government's, monitoring your internet traffic, all of these things when they want to see if you're watching lots of pornography and stuff like that, right? And then your social credit score will go down because you'll be deemed to be less of a good citizen. Good behaviors and bad behaviors, the classic red and black identities that Mao came up with. So again, seeing here how all of these systems come together, and why I hate the recycling system that we have in the UK anyway, because it's an absolute freaking ball ache and it's absolutely pointless. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, it all goes to the same fucking place and it gets chucked in a big bastard fucking pile, right? So again, you're separating it, you're doing this big struggle session of separating it and stuff like that. It's all going to go to the same place. It's all going to go to the same place. But if the government wanted to, they could absolutely use that to work out a lot about your behaviors. If you have alcohol problem and all of these things. Or again, if you're going over your meat allowances, if there's a lot of the Tesco's meat things that are in your recycling, right? A lot of the meat package, be like, maybe they're going over on their meat allowance. Maybe they're not meeting their carbon targets and all this stuff. Maybe they're exceeding their carbon allowances. Maybe we need to get a scale back on their ability to buy meat next time they go to the supermarket. Maybe they need to buy more crickets instead. Seeing how all of these things then can work together and how well organized the system is. And again, your doctors and engineers, ladies and gentlemen, your doctors and engineers, your care workers and stuff like that, tell me, ladies and gentlemen, if you want this person potentially looking after your relative in a hospital or a care home or anything like that, tell me that you'd feel safe when you see this video right now.
I'm getting right, get in. Fuck you. Get in. Oh, he's trying to punch it. Fuck it up. Fuck. Stop, bro. Yeah, I know it's so.
Right, I'm going to put that on mute. That person had a knife in their hand. That person had a knife in their hand, which you can actually see it there. In fact, there, you can see it right there. That's a big, long, frigging stabby stick right there. You can see it more clearly there now. That's a big-ass, long, stabby stick right there. All because what? They were going over and recording. Now, many of them have been popping the dinghies and stuff like that, which is good. It's a tremendous service, which they're doing. And this is where we've gotten to now. The government, guy who posted this, by the way, is over there. He's 18 years old. He's 18 years old. What a guy. Now, there's other videos of this happening as well. They're surrounding the car, very threatening, all of this stuff. I don't want these people in my country. I don't want to think then that these people could be on the hospital wards looking after, my elderly relatives. God forbid, they could have been looking after me when I was my most vulnerable. Right? Thinking back to a lot of things, I look back on my stay in hospital when I came very close to losing my life a hell of a lot differently. A hell of a lot differently than I did at that time. I've spoken about that on a couple of podcasts as well before. Terrifying. And the government is like, we need more of these. We need less of British people in our institutions because diversity is such a great thing. We can clearly see now that diversity has been such a good thing, but it gets even worse, ladies and gentlemen. It gets even worse. We're going to tie it in with the courts now. We're going to tie it in with the courts again. And we've got more on the courts coming up later. This is a headline from GB News. Courts are now to give drug cash, right? So things that have been appropriated from drugs, right? Drugs that have been seized and the money and so on that's generated from that, to charities with connections to deportation detention group. Now you might think, we're using drug cash that are often being brought in via these foreign channels, via drug smuggling and all of that, right? To then aid in efforts to remove the people that have been in connection with these things. And then close the loopholes by which these things are getting through. No, it's actually the opposite. Now, the courts are giving forfeited drug money to a fund which supports deportation detainees in resisting deportation. A judge has ordered that money forfeited from drug cases should be sent to a fund with connections to a charity that supports illegal migrants facing deportation. Half of cash forfeited under the Misuse of Drugs Act at Lewes Crown Court, as one example, has been sent to the charity the Sussex Community Foundation. Judge Christine Lane, right? Can only imagine what the haircut is. Probably get a good, guess just from the name, right? The most senior judge in Brighton and Hove made this order. Money forfeited under Section 27 of the Act usually goes to the police and the Home Office, which is obviously, they're not going to do anything about it anyway. But now it's going directly back to these charities, which are going to now further aid. They're giving more resources again to not be able to get rid of these people that are often directly contributing to the problem. Because think about it, the perfect vector for drugs to be smuggled through. Think about what this means. You can clearly see the money laundering in operation. You can clearly see the money laundering in operation, and again, how it feeds into getting just more and more people into the country. Drugs come in from outside, smuggled in through all kinds of routes and stuff like that, right? This massively open border, and every illegal migrant being called a quote-unquote asylum seeker, being one of the prime vectors or one of the prime opportunistic spots for a drug smuggler, for a drug manufacturer, like the cartels and stuff like that. Perfect avenue right there, because you've seen that the government is complicit in it. But then, any money that actually does come from like prosecutions or forfeited from drug cases and stuff like that, right, then goes back into the same mechanisms keeping those people in the country. It goes back into the same system. So the money from the drugs which are brought in through the open border then goes back into to stopping people from being removed and then keeping the border open. That's where we are now. And that's why the big cartel that we have in this country is obviously the government and the charities that stem off from it. The Sussex Community Foundation received millions in donations last year, which included £227,330 from 2 government grants on top. fund back several local initiatives, including Education and Disability Support Plus grants for a charity that provides English conversation classes for refugees and asylum seekers. Again, this is what you're seeing now. It's all part of the wider immigration system. And the government is giving tunes to the hundreds of thousands of taxpayer money to initiatives that I would imagine the vast majority of people are going to be opposed to if you was able to explain it to them in the true way of what is actually going on. And yeah, there'll be the odd couple of people that would never believe you no matter what, right? I get that. But most people are reasonable people and logical people. When you break it down and you can see how much, the government has to gain from all of this stuff, the political power that they have to gain, because that's ultimately all that they care about. Think of all of the votes that they get to keep in the country by helping charities or funding charities that help these illegal aliens facing deportation. Think of the votes that they get and think of how much less they have to work for the British vote then. That is just purely logical. There's nothing you can say about that which you could put any kind of a label at, because it doesn't make sense. Because the whole vector of attack there is at the government. The whole attack vector is at the government because that's where it all ultimately stems from. Haven't said anything bad about anyone. Haven't said anything, that could be any kind of label, some ism or phobe, right? It's a case of government wants more people, wherever they're coming from, because that presents more, eventually that will get to a greater vote share, and then they don't have to listen to the British people, the pesky British people anymore. All while claiming to be defenders of democracy. And that's the end game, at least the way that I see it. Now, another thing, we do have to put scrutiny on where people are coming from, mind. We do have to put scrutiny on where people are coming from, and this is becoming more and more apparent as the Americans are learning it as well. This is a slightly interesting story on this one now, ladies and gentlemen. We've seen the controversy at the moment with the CDLs. CDLs being this weird, I don't know exactly what it stands for, but it's the system which is allowing a bunch of these, illegal aliens to get on the trucks in California and stuff like that. The whole spree that happened a little while ago with like 3 or 4 cases of Indians turning these massive trucks in the middle of traffic and then killing a bunch of people on highways, right? And then they found out they were illegal aliens. They shouldn't have been in the country, right? This now is even more concerning because now you're seeing that some of the students that have been on these programs, right, in Texas in this instance, on these CDL truck learning driving programs, right, Afghan military students have been going through training and told the instructor, we'll play this section of the podcast now, to slow the truck down so they could take pictures of things. So you're talking overpasses, intersections, bridges. No good reason for that to be happening. They're not sightseeing, they're on training. They're on training, right? And then they're trying to dictate to the instructor to slow down so they can take pictures of things. You have to wonder why. And you think, where are these people coming from? What other interests might they be working on behalf of? Ellie, an instructor of 20 plus years in Texas, never had a student ask this before. Only these Afghans then that came in, 15 plus of them. All of them were asking to slow down so they could take pictures of critical infrastructure. You couldn't help but notice then it feels like an agenda. This would be terrifying, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we need to put more scrutiny, quite literally in this instance now, on who's driving our trucks. Now think about it. Again, it could be anything. Who's delivering your parcels, right? Who's delivering your parcels? Who's driving these big trucks for big corporations and stuff like that who profit massively off of the foreign slave labor? Video coming on screen now.
These students asked the
Apologies, ladies and gentlemen.
they
It's a naturally quiet video.
slow the truck down so they could take pictures of things. Overpasses.
Oh, let's go into this.
Intersections. Yeah.
What did that look like? Just pulling out a cell phone and taking pictures of infrastructure? What? Okay. Your best guess here. Your student wants you to slow down to take pictures of stuff, which is, has that ever happened before? Have you ever had a student ask to slow down?
Never in my life or my career have I ever had anybody try to dictate anything that was happening. I am the instructor.
Right.
This is our route. This is what we're doing. And this is how you're going to comply and get through what you need to. Never have I ever been told to take a picture of a bridge Or an overpass?
Was there ever pictures of? I'm trying to play devil's advocate here and not go down the path of the biggest conspiracy. But were there ever pictures of scenic stuff? Were they ever taking pictures of like beautiful areas in Texas, or was it just infrastructure type things?
Just infrastructures, overpasses, things of that sort. And that's when...
Was this multiple students?
It was like 15, the military Afghan students.
They were all doing this.
It was just them, that specific group. There were other students there from other walks of life that were oblivious, that had no idea. They never asked any questions. It felt like an agenda.
How interesting. It felt like an agenda. And yep, call this lady whatever you want. You know, the natural response from the left be like, oh, she's racist, she's this, she's that. No, it's observation. It's pattern recognition. That's actually good survival skill. And then you look at some areas of the world and then you see some areas of the world who they run by, other interests, other groups which they are in connection with, you know. And you think, ooh, like we would have the same scrutiny with, say, for example, Chinese citizens that come and study in this country and Confucius Institutes and all these other things, how they're potentially every person is potentially a little proxy for the Chinese Communist Party. What are these people working on for? They're not taking photos. They're saying like, oh, this is a lovely landscape. Can I please stop you? This would be great to send to my wife back home. Like, look how lovely this landscape is, this lovely valley or whatever. Kind of understandable. Why would you be taking pictures of overpasses, of bridges, critical infrastructure and stuff like that, where a lot of people are, especially in big cities like Texas, where you have so much in terms of traffic and people every single day passing through these places, leads you only down a couple of different spots. Very likely, if it feels like an agenda, again, oftentimes it's good to trust your gut on these things. And when you have examples in the past, again, you have to sometimes generalize for your own survival and think, what the hell is this happening for? Why are these other students not doing it? But these guys are. Oh, maybe they're planning something. Maybe, right? If Texas hasn't done their due diligence or whatever, they've managed to come in through the open border. They're potentially operating with nefarious intentions. There's really no good reason for it. And, they're going to take a picture of it so they can memorize it on a test and stuff like that. But why are the others not asking to do that? No, it's quite clear there's something different at play. And Texas, with the whole thing about Epic City and all of these things, they need to start taking a lot of these things seriously. They need to start taking a lot of these things seriously, because a lot of these things that we're seeing, they are part of concerted agendas. They absolutely are. One thing that doesn't appear to be, however, at least at this moment in time, was what happened in France recently. Now, on that stream, I actually had somebody that I think lives in France, see if they had any extra information on what was going on at the moment. So far, it doesn't appear to be anything much, but a lot of the stuff that was reported at the time does seem to have been somewhat incorrect, at least if some updated reporting has been believed. So some places like Central Chronicle and Telangana Today, so the two articles which I've got the link down below. Initially, it's been reported on Monday. Oh, this isn't from today. This isn't from today because this was. There you go. Published date was December 6th. Sorry. Published date was December 6th. Car plows into Christmas crowd in France's Guadeloupe. At least 10 killed. Led to many initially speculating, again, myself included. I can't remember if I said anything publicly about it, but myself included, thinking, oh my God, is this Magdeburg? Is this something like that happening again? Did initially seem that it was. It was being reported initially that 10 people were killed and 9 others were injured. Local broadcaster Radio Caraiba International, don't know how to, Internacional, I don't know how to really say that, reported that 3 of the injured are in critical condition. This is from the Central Chronicle now. The incident took place in Scholcher Square, located opposite the town hall and the church, where final preparations were being made. Now, I went back to an initial report on this. So Tommy Robinson was one of the first people to break the news on this. There were some videos coming from it as well. 10 dead as cars driven into a Christmas market in preparation for crowds in France's Guadeloupe. However, then community notes did come in and add what I think is quite important context. And I've got the article which they referenced. Now, again, if anybody has any extra information to add, please leave it down below in the comments or in the live chat if you're watching the live premiere, if you're watching it on YouTube. Apparently, there actually was no fatalities. There's only 23 injured, including 6 children, which is obviously tragic in and of itself. The driver himself is a 45-year-old. Now, this is something that was reported, that I did know at the time, a 45-year-old man, but apparently now he's also been identified as a local from Santa Anne. He was under the influence of alcohol and cannabis, which would explain how this happened. And it was not actually a Christmas market that many were reporting, but it was a Christmas lights switch on, which was attended by about 300 people. So this is the article in question, which then Community Notes referenced from an outlet known as France Info. So I will bring this up on screen now as well, just so you can read through it as well. Just going to move myself out of the way a little bit. There we go. So the headline is driver who struck 19 people in Santa Anne who tested positive for cannabis and alcohol is being prosecuted for causing traffic injuries. The driver responsible for the spectacular incident that occurred Friday evening in Santa Anne, Guadalupe, will appear in court for an immediate hearing with a deferred trial. He was under the influence of alcohol and cannabis at the time of the incident, 2 aggravating circumstances that could justify pre-trial detention. On Friday, December 5th, around 7:45, a serious incident caused panic in Place Chaucheur, in front of the Santa Anne Church in Guadalupe, where approximately 300 people had gathered for the Christmas lights switch on. A driver first collided with another vehicle before missing a turn and striking more than 20 people gathered in front of a food truck. He tested positive for cannabis and alcohol. 19 injured, including 6 children, still hospitalized. As of Saturday morning, all remained in this stable condition. Health has not worsened. So again, apparently then there's no actual fatalities that were being reported as well. So that is the end of the article then as well. So that's what we understand at this moment in time. I have no experience with this outlet or anything like that. I can't make judgments on if it is a reliable outlet or anything like that. So if you have any more information about it, please do put it down in the comments. Everyone benefits from it. But it does not appear that this was in fact a terror incident. And that's where a lot of people who, again, this is why I try to make sure that I don't get caught up in the social media flurry a lot. I try to always then exercise, that little bit of skepticism, which could save you at moments like this, right? From making mistakes, from jumping to conclusions, and then having those conclusions the one time appear false because it completely destroys your credibility, right? So again, it doesn't appear that this one so far was terror related, as we have seen seemingly in the past, like Magdeburg. But again, we do have to take into account why there's so many barriers up around these things now in several cities around the place, right? You go to many areas of the UK, you see these barriers set up. A lot of places have said now they're going to cancel their Christmas events, they're going to cancel Christmas markets and stuff like that. I believe Germany said they're going to cancel one because of times where that speculation, or we have been proven right. Because we have been proven right in many instances, like Magdeburg. You go back and see one of the episodes we done on that a good while ago, right? You see the horrific footage from that, or go on to X and type in Magdeburg Christmas market. You'll find the horrific footage. It's absolutely horrific to watch, right? So again, one time, it does seem in this instance that people's speculation, right? It does seem that people weren't speculating too much from what I could see. You see a lot of people asking, is this another usual suspect? Is this another of these instances that we keep seeing all around Europe? And those instances are happening. But you don't want to then play into the enemy's hands by then jumping on a conclusion, right? When it's the one time where actually it doesn't appear to be true. So absolutely tragic. We can only hope that every single victim of this makes a full recovery and isn't left with lifelong impediments and stuff like that, especially the children, obviously. This speaks to more about people who get behind the fucking wheel when they're obviously drunk out of their mind and on cannabis and all of these things, right? So we need, I don't know, maybe there needs to be more scrutiny around that, right? Maybe there's more conversation to be had around that. It doesn't appear to be terrorism related. Now, this is one thing that we really do need to take into account, though, ladies and gentlemen. With people talking about this, right, and the government surveillance, the wrong speak, the totalitarian legislation, all the stuff that's being brought in. Germany, what's going on over there at the moment, seems to be absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Berlin has now acted, and you got to think, Think about it in the context of things the government doesn't want you talking about. Let's always have to think about these things now. Think about it in the context of things the government doesn't want you talking about. Berlin has enacted a new police law granting authorities extensive surveillance powers. So apparently now Berlin police can actually hack phones, enter homes covertly under new surveillance law. Remember when the police before, when they wanted to enter your home to do some kind of search or whatever, would have to go get a warrant from the court, right? Make their case to a judge to get a warrant to go to your house, right? To either search it or to, in like the FBI in the 70s and 80s with the organized crime families bugging it, right? They had to justify their case to a judge to be able to then go and put a wiretap in someone's house. And obviously then there's very strict guidelines around that when you went and can't listen, because again, obviously, privacy. See that is all thrown out the window. Police can now secretly enter homes and monitor digital communications using tools such as Strats Trojaner, or State Trojan malicious software. So those viruses that, again, the government before would be really warning you about, right? Trojan viruses, phishing scams, all of this stuff. They now seem to be openly using that kind of stuff. The very malicious software we're told that we have to be careful of because of scammers and stuff like that seems to be our government, again, like I spoke about with Rob Kugenvan, where something that was illegal before, police were caught using it and then they just made it legal. As if they're making this legal because now the police can use them for whatever they want, right? Hate crime or supposed hate crime. Like in Scotland where they said you talk about something around your dinner table, which is exactly where I am right now, and that you can be prosecuted for that if it's deemed to be hateful or Islamophobic or racist or anything like this. The law allows online searches and increased video surveillance. Critics argue this represents an unprecedented invasion of privacy. Green Party representative Vasily Franco warned that these measures equate to total surveillance. Green Party. It does seem like all Green Party officials are not created equal when you look across Europe versus the UK. Berlin's new police law. Total surveillance even in cases of document forgery and betting fraud. Police officers are now, this is from the Berliner Zeitung, by the way, police officers are now allowed to secretly break into apartments. Left-wing and Green parties see this as data storage on an unprecedented scale. On the one hand, police officers must knock on the door of a refugee's room if they want to pick up a foreigner for a deportation flight. The Federal Constitution Court, I'm just going to see if I can bring this up on screen a minute, ladies and gentlemen, so that you can read this absolute lunacy as well. So this is the article will be coming up on screen in a moment. So it says again, on the one hand, officers must knock on the door of a refugee's room if they want to pick up a foreigner for a deportation flight. The Federal Constitutional Court recently ruled that officers need a judicial search warrant because the basic law guarantees the inviolability of the home. On the other hand, police officers will now be allowed to secretly break into apartments. This has been decided by the House of Representatives. You can see that the rest of the article is actually on a paywall. So maybe you can go and find that and link more information for us down below, anybody that may want to go and read that article in full. But it's obviously unprecedented. Completely in lines with the whole thing where Ursula von der Leyen said that, the EU is all about freedom of speech, all this and that. And then literally when somebody was getting up to criticize her, they were removed. A similar thing happened with Advance recently. It was it was awful to see. It doesn't look very good at all, where that lady got up and she was questioning, the influence of certain Jewish figures and Jewish groups and stuff like that, echoing seemingly what Charlie Kirk said and actually referencing Charlie Kirk in her speech, right? Saying that, again, some of the biggest pushers of this hard left-wing agenda, open borders, all of this stuff, open borders, Marxism and all these things are seemingly like secular Jewish organizations, right? It would seem like, or like, left-wing organizations headed up by Jewish people. You got to think, why? This is perfectly good to criticize, perfectly good to scrutinize at the very least, because you got to think of, again, AIPAC, for example, in America, perfectly good to criticize. Same way you would think about Act Blue and all of these other lobbying groups, right? The fact that the same way with all other foreign influence from Doha and Qatar and all of these other places, right? Influence from foreigners inside our own parliament that are slowly backdooring us back into the EU. All manner of foreign influence you have to scrutinize. But then Advance, again, Nick Buckley was good in my books before, seemed to be quite a strong speaker and everything, right? Again, the minute she starts going on about this, and the crowd didn't help whatsoever, they're going about free speech, and eventually then she didn't even really get a chance to ask her question properly. Maybe in that instance you say, look, don't come up with a big speech. Just ask the question. If you're getting up to ask a question, little bit of preface maybe, and then ask the question. I think that's the only real criticism you can say. But Advance, again, supposedly a free speech organization, you'd think they'd be able to let it go forward, right? But they have no problem, Ben Habib and stuff like that and all these things, they have no problem with criticizing or scrutinizing Islamic influence and foreign influence in that regard. It does seem then that there's this weird double standard when it comes to Israel or Jewish influence, which, again, Charlie Kirk, before he was killed, outright said that some of the biggest pushers of it are these Jewish organizations. I don't know if he actually named them on that podcast clip and stuff like that, but he was saying that behind the scenes, he was getting a lot of shit from them. So, again, really, really not a good look. And you can see then how it plays into things the government doesn't want you talking about. I'm not sure I got onto that little tangent, but this is the last thing I wanted to go over for today because I need to wrap this up because I got to go. This was absolutely nuts. And I covered this on a short as well, a YouTube short as well, because it's just absolutely insane that this happened. Portland jury has cleared a black man of assault because white man he stabbed had said the N-word. This is the headline from the Daily Mail, and they got rightfully community noted. Because the headline implies that the racial epithet was said, and then that's why he got stabbed. The inverse appears to be true. The guy got stabbed, and as a result then used the racial epithet. And that's actually why then the court argued, seemingly, they couldn't actually find the guy a public defender, so that seems, again, another reason why he was acquitted. But you had this case of jury nullification where essentially they argued that it was posthumous self-defense because he stabbed a guy and then a guy used a racial epithet, right? That classifies as self-defense. Here's a little bit of a video from Andy No talking about this. Portland, Oregon jury acquitted a violent black career criminal who admitted to stabbing a white man because the victim used the N-word after being stabbed. The defense argued the stabbing was a self-defense against racism. That's where we are now. You can stab a white man. It's open season on whites, it appears at the moment. You can stab a white man and just say that he used a racial epithet. Bear in mind, the body cameras and stuff like that, all of the CCTV and recorded footage, as far as I'm aware, did not actually corroborate this, right? Because they didn't have audio, as far as I'm aware. I'll show you the article in a moment. You can just say it, and then because the courts are too scared of being called racist and all of these things if they don't vote the right way, then you will be have a completely nullified jury and justice will not be done, it seems. And you can actually argue self-defense even though you were the aggressor.
Police announced that 42-year-old Gary Omar Edwards, who was arrested on assault charges, it stems from a stabbing that happened on Northwest 5th Street just after 9:30 yesterday morning. Police say a person was stabbed in the shoulder area and went to the hospital with serious injuries. Edwards was arrested by the Central Bike Squad. There's no word on the stabbing victim's condition.
So that's what happened. But then the Daily Mail, with this article down here, I'll give it to you now again. Gary Edwards, 43, was charged with second-degree assault for stabbing the man in Portland near a light rail stop on July 8th. He was found not guilty of the crime. Bear in mind, this is only getting reported on now. This was back on Halloween when this verdict came in. The jury learned the victim was using racial slurs in the aftermath of the altercation. Let me just see if I can bring this up on screen for you so you can see I'm not lying to you. He was found not guilty of the crime on October 31st after the jury found that the victim was using racial slurs in the aftermath of the altercation. That is where you're seeing now, ladies and gentlemen, that, again, Portland being one of the hotbeds, one of the biggest hotbeds for Antifa, this anti-racist stuff, all of these things, right? That it's not surprising that there was this massive miscarriage of justice that occurred. I'd like to see the makeup of the jury. I'd really like to see the makeup of the jury in terms of the demographic makeup of the jury also. Edwards, who is homeless and has a previous assault conviction, admitted to knifing the victim, Gregory Howard Jr., but it was claimed in self-defense because the other man called in the N-word. Security cameras with no audio captured Edwards with a fixed blade in hand approaching Howard as he sat on a bench. Howard immediately jumped up and pushed Edwards. The two scuffled until Edwards was stabbed in the shoulder. Daniel Small, the defense attorney, reportedly told the jury that his client was approaching Howard to see if he would trade his knife for cigarettes. What other than racism could explain why Mr. Howard perceived hatred, animosity, and aggression from a complete stranger? Maybe the fucking knife. Have you thought about that? Maybe the fucking knife. And maybe a knowledge of certain demographics being represented in certain crimes. maybe, all right, a little bit of stereotyping. Was he then later proved to possibly be correct? Somebody just approaches you with a knife. What's the first thing that you're going to do? A complete stranger. A complete stranger just approaches you with a knife. What the hell are you going to do? Moments later, body camera footage from security officers captured Howard shouting a racial slur at Edwards after he had been stabbed. And then the prosecutor told Catherine Williams told the jury it did not matter what the victim said after he was stabbed. I don't really care how he reacted that much. Not going to lie. There was the incident as well in Cinnabon somewhere. A white lady was using racial slurs at, I believe it was some Somalis, when apparently later on it came out that they were basically sexually assaulting her over her appearance for not wearing a hijab and so on. That's what I've heard. Anyway, if anybody has any more information on that, please leave it down in the comments or whatever. But then she was, again, quite funny. There's been allegations as well. She's like really liberal. Apparently she's like a really liberal lady, voted, like for Kamala, apparently, via things that she's liked on Facebook, allegedly, and stuff like that, this lady. And now you're seeing there with the fatigue in many instances of being labelled as things that you're not, and seeing these miscarriages of justice because you have then violent criminals, career criminals, mind you, repeat offenders, that can be let off because they got stabbed, because they stabbed somebody, and the victim used a naughty, a demon word, an unsayable word. And that means that it was all of a sudden in self-defense. You're saying here that it was more self-defense for somebody to have already stabbed somebody and then have heard a racial epithet. That is then more self-defense than seemingly somebody getting stabbed and then saying something that's racist. There's no equivalency here. But we are meant to believe, right, and flagellate ourselves over the notion that saying this one word is worse than getting stabbed, than getting murdered, getting all of these things. It's not going to fly. It's not going to fly anymore when you're seeing that now career criminals are being let out by these judges, by these prosecutors, all of these things, right? I understand the prosecutors have a job to do, the defense have a job to do, and all stuff like that. I understand that. But then the jury has the facts in front of them. Guy walks up to another guy with a knife. Guy pushes the other guy away because he doesn't want to be involved with the other guy with a knife. He gets stabbed in the shoulder for his trouble, even though he never asked to be bothered to begin with. And then when he gets stabbed, he uses a bad word. And then that makes him guilty, and that makes the person who stabbed him the victim. And then you say the stabbing was then posthumously in self-defense. And then you wonder why so many people think that it's just open season on white people, for example, and why race relations and all of these things, a place like America, are only going to get worse if this continues. That's why you see many people now, they're openly saying, nope, we're going to go to our own communities. You have guys like Return to the Land, for example, right? That I'm not sure really what to make of their political philosophy, but you see it in many areas that apparently there's certain groups doing it in Wales now as well. Very small sectors, people being like, no, we want our own community and we don't bother, and we want it just with our people, i.e. whites only. We want our own people, and then they're being demonized as racist and all of these things. Well, I don't think you can blame many of them. I think you can have questions about their political ideology and stuff like that. Right? Really good questions. I don't think you can blame it when you see things like black man gets acquitted after stabbing somebody because white guy after being stabbed says naughty word, and they claimed it was self-defense for the black guy. Can't blame people for being like, okay, well, we're just not going to associate with anybody anymore. We don't want to associate with anybody anymore. We want to associate with people that look like us and look like us only, and we are going to leave to go and do it. No. That's then, again, if you leave, it's white flight. If you stay, you're an oppressor. If you say something that, again, that's violence, but also silence is violence, all of these things. There's no way to win. The only way to win is not to play And that means that you lose everything. But I'm saying the only way for the English to win and not be offensive in this case of demographic replacement is not to play. But obviously that's just going to result in more demographic replacement. So you need to stop being scared of labels. You need to stop being scared of all of these different things, bad words and all of these things. Especially in Britain, where in the next generation or so, we could have no say in this land that we called home in what goes on, because we'd be a minority. We need to be taking that a lot more seriously than it actually is. Because yes, the demographics sadly do matter. Sadly do matter. And that'll do it for today. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it useful. Right. Thank you for everybody that likes, shares, subscribes, all of that stuff. Tune into the stream. Make sure you find the recap down below. I really appreciate it. Lots of good stuff that we talked about in there. It wasn't just going over and just watching the debate for the sake of watching the debate. There's much more in terms of trying to do a little bit of critiques and stuff, trying to point out fallacies, trying to point out where the logical arguments then lead you with, again, the overall winner of the debate, obviously, how to conduct yourself, how not to conduct yourself in a debate. It was a lot more than that. There's a reason why it was less than an hour long video and it was about nearly a 4-hour long stream. Okay, so go and check it out down below. The lessons in it are timeless. The things have aged extremely well on one side, not so well on the other. But anyway, thank you very much for watching, ladies and gentlemen. If you have anything you want to reach out to the show with, please use the email address down in the description below, votv.tips@proton.me. That is votv.tips@proton.me. Please, again, bring things forward. Always looking for more things to talk about, especially if you want to blow the whistle on anything or whatever. If you know somebody that, wants to bring the whistle forward on something, but, doesn't have an idea where to do it, send this video or whatever, tell them to use the email address down below. And yeah, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good morning, afternoon, evening, good night, wherever you are. Diolch yn fawr. Thank you for watching. Hwyl fawr. We'll see you next time. You take care now. Godspeed.